The city lights of Chicago glimmered through the towering glass windows of TechVision Industries. It was past midnight, and the building had fallen silent. The hum of computers and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights were the only sounds that filled the empty corridors. Kwame pushed his cleaning cart down the hallway, the wheels squeaking softly against the polished marble floor. He wore a dark blue uniform, with his name stitched on the front pocket. His hands, calloused from years of hard work, gripped the handle of the cart as he moved from office to office. He had been working the night shift at TechVision for nearly 2 years now. Every night he arrived at 10 and left at 6 in the morning. He cleaned the offices, emptied the trash, mopped the floors, and made sure everything looked perfect before the employees arrived. But tonight felt different. As Kwame reached the executive floor, he paused for a moment. This floor always made him uneasy. It was where the CEO, Mr. Richard Calloway, had his office. A man who had built TechVision from the ground up and was now worth millions. Kwame had seen Mr. Calloway many times. Usually from a distance, the CEO was always in expensive suits, always surrounded by assistants, always barking orders into his phone. But whenever their paths crossed, Mr. Calloway barely acknowledged him. At best, he would get a quick nod. At worst, complete silence. Kwame unlocked the door to the CEO's office and stepped inside. The room was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline. A mahogany desk sat in the center, surrounded by leather chairs and shelves filled with awards and photographs. He began his routine, dusting the desk, emptying the wastebasket, wiping down the glass surfaces. As he worked, his eyes drifted to the framed degrees on the wall. Harvard Business School, Stanford MBA, a lifetime of privilege and opportunity. Kwame's jaw tightened. He remembered his own degrees. Back in Ghana, he had been a respected software engineer. He had graduated top of his class from Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. He had worked on major projects, designed systems, solved complex problems. But here in America, none of that mattered. His credentials weren't recognized. His experience was dismissed, and so he took the only job he could find, cleaning offices at night while the world slept. Kwame shook his head and continued cleaning. He had learned not to dwell on the past. Survival was what mattered now. He had a wife and 2 children depending on him. He sent money back to his aging mother in Accra. There was no room for self-pity. As he wiped down the CEO's computer screen, he noticed a sticky note attached to the monitor. It was written in Mr. Calloway's bold handwriting. The message was short but cutting. It instructed the day staff to make sure the janitor didn't touch anything important, adding that these people didn't understand technology. Kwame froze. His heart sank. He read the note again, hoping he had misunderstood. But the words were clear. These people, he knew exactly what that meant. Kwame stood there for a long moment, staring at the note. His hands trembled slightly, but he forced himself to stay calm. He had dealt with this kind of disrespect before. It wasn't new, but it never stopped hurting. He crumpled the note in his hand and tossed it into the trash. Then he finished cleaning the office in silence, his mind heavy with frustration and anger. When he was done, he closed the door behind him and moved on to the next office. But the words lingered in his mind. If only Mr. Calloway knew the truth. The next evening, Kwame returned to work as usual. He clocked in, grabbed his cart, and started his rounds. The building was quiet again, just the way he preferred it. But as he reached the executive floor, something felt off. The lights were still on in several offices. Voices echoed down the hallway. Kwame slowed his pace. Curious, it was unusual for anyone to be here this late. As he approached Mr. Calloway's office, he heard shouting. Kwame recognized the voice immediately. It was Mr. Calloway, and he sounded furious. Through the glass door, Kwame could see the CEO pacing back and forth, his phone pressed to his ear. 2 other executives stood nearby, their faces pale with worry. The CEO was yelling about a disaster, demanding to know how it had happened. He insisted that someone fix the problem immediately, warning that they were losing millions every hour. The system remained down. Kwame hesitated. He knew he should keep moving, mind his own business. But something made him stop. One of the executives noticed him standing outside and opened the door slightly. The man told Kwame to come back later, his tone sharp and dismissive. Then he shut the door in his face. Kwame stood there for a moment, then turned and walked away. But his mind was racing. He had heard enough to understand what was happening. TechVision's main server had been compromised. A cyber attack. The company's entire system was down, and no one knew how to fix it. Kwame knew exactly what that meant. If the system stayed down for too long, the company would lose clients, contracts, and millions of dollars. People would lose their jobs, and Mr. Calloway's empire would crumble. For a moment, Kwame felt a strange sense of satisfaction. The man who had written that note about him was now facing a crisis he couldn't solve. But then Kwame thought about the other employees, the receptionists, the IT staff, the security guards. People like him, just trying to make a living. They would be the ones to suffer if the company went under. Kwame made a decision. He finished his cleaning rounds quickly, then returned to the executive floor. The lights in Mr. Calloway's office were still on, but the voices had quieted. Kwame could see the CEO slumped in his chair, his head in his hands. Kwame knocked on the door. Mr. Calloway looked up, annoyed. He asked what Kwame wanted, his voice dripping with irritation. Kwame took a deep breath and explained that he knew this wasn't his place, but he had overheard what was happening and believed he could help. Mr. Calloway stared at him, his expression a mix of confusion and disbelief. He questioned whether Kwame even knew what a server was, his tone mocking. Kwame felt the familiar sting of disrespect, but he kept his voice steady. He confirmed that he did know and explained that he had been a software engineer in his home country. He mentioned that he had dealt with cyber attacks before. Mr. Calloway laughed, a bitter, mocking sound. He pointed out that Kwame was a janitor, not an engineer. Kwame acknowledged that he was a janitor now, but emphasized that his current job didn't change what he knew or what he was capable of. For a moment, Mr. Calloway said nothing. He looked at Kwame as if seeing him for the first time. Then he sighed and waved his hand, dismissively. He told Kwame that if he thought he could do something, he should go ahead, but warned him not to waste his time. Kwame nodded and stepped into the office. Mr. Calloway gestured toward the computer on his desk, where several error messages flashed across multiple screens. The CEO explained that their entire system had been hacked and that their top IT team had been working on it for hours with no success. Kwame approached the desk and studied the screens carefully. His eyes moved quickly, analyzing the code, the error logs, the patterns of the attack. It had been years since he had worked with systems like this, but the knowledge was still there, buried deep in his mind. He asked if he could sit down. Mr. Calloway hesitated, then nodded. Kwame sat in the CEO's chair and began typing. His fingers moved swiftly across the keyboard, navigating through firewalls, tracing the source of the breach, identifying the vulnerabilities that had been exploited. Mr. Calloway stood behind him, watching in silence. The two executives who had been in the office earlier returned, curious about what was happening. They saw Kwame at the computer and exchanged confused glances. One of them asked Mr. Calloway why the janitor was touching the system. The CEO told him to be quiet and let Kwame work. Minutes turned into an hour. Kwame worked methodically, isolating the malicious code, rebuilding corrupted files, and restoring access to critical systems. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but he didn't stop. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the screens flickered. The error messages disappeared. The system came back online. Kwame leaned back in the chair, exhaling deeply. He told Mr. Calloway that the system was secure now and that he had patched the vulnerabilities to prevent future attacks. The room was silent. Mr. Calloway stared at the screens, then at Kwame. His face was a mixture of shock, disbelief, and something else. He asked Kwame how he had done it. Kwame explained that he had identified the attack as a ransomware variant targeting outdated encryption protocols. He detailed the steps he had taken to neutralize the threat and restore the system. The executives stood frozen, unable to process what they were witnessing. The janitor they had dismissed, the man they barely acknowledged, had just saved the company. Mr. Calloway sat down slowly, his hands trembling. He asked Kwame why he had helped, especially after the way he had been treated. Kwame looked at him calmly. He explained that he hadn't done it for Mr. Calloway. He had done it for the people who worked in the building, the ones who would lose their jobs if the company failed. He mentioned the receptionists, the security guards, the cleaning staff, people like him. Mr. Calloway's face flushed with guilt. He asked Kwame why he had never mentioned his background before. Kwame's expression hardened. He replied that no one had ever asked. He pointed out that Mr. Calloway had seen him every night for 2 years but had never once asked his name or where he came from. To the CEO, he had simply been invisible. The words hung in the air like a weight. Mr. Calloway opened his mouth to respond, but nothing came out. He realized the truth in Kwame's words. He had never seen him. Not really. Kwame stood up and told Mr. Calloway that he needed to finish his cleaning rounds. But Mr. Calloway stopped him. The CEO asked him to wait and requested that they talk in the morning. He promised that things would be different. Kwame looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. He walked out of the office, leaving Mr. Calloway alone with his thoughts. The next morning, Kwame arrived at work expecting the usual routine. But when he entered the building, the receptionist told him that Mr. Calloway wanted to see him immediately. Kwame made his way to the executive floor, his mind racing. He wasn't sure what to expect. When he entered Mr. Calloway's office, the CEO stood up and gestured for him to sit. This time there was no dismissiveness in his tone, no condescension. Mr. Calloway thanked Kwame for what he had done the night before. He admitted that he had been wrong to judge him, wrong to dismiss him, wrong to treat him as less than he was. Kwame listened quietly. Mr. Calloway explained that he had spent the entire night thinking about their conversation. He confessed that he had built his company on the belief that success came from hard work and intelligence, but he realized now that he had been blind to the talent right in front of him. He told Kwame that he wanted to offer him a position as a senior software engineer at TechVision. He promised a salary that reflected his skills, full benefits, and the respect he deserved. Kwame was silent for a moment, processing the offer. He asked Mr. Calloway if this offer was genuine or simply a reaction to guilt. Mr. Calloway met his eyes and insisted that it was genuine. He acknowledged that he couldn't undo the past 2 years, but he wanted to make things right moving forward. Kwame considered the offer carefully. He thought about his wife, his children, his mother back home. He thought about the years of struggle, the nights spent cleaning floors while his engineering skills went to waste. Finally, he nodded. He accepted the offer, but with one condition. He told Mr. Calloway that he wanted the company to create a program to help immigrants get their foreign credentials recognized and assist them in finding work in their fields. Mr. Calloway agreed without hesitation. 3 months later, Kwame sat in his new office on the executive floor, the same floor he used to clean every night. His desk was near the window, overlooking the city skyline. His name was on the door, Kwame Mensah, Senior Software Engineer. But more importantly, TechVision had launched the Immigrant Talent Initiative, a program that helped foreign professionals navigate the complex process of credential recognition and job placement. Dozens of immigrants had already found work in their fields because of it. Kwame often thought about that night when he had stood in Mr. Calloway's office, invisible and dismissed. He remembered the note that had called him one of these people, and he smiled. Because now when people walked past his office, they didn't see a janitor. They saw an engineer, a leader, a man who had proven that talent and intelligence had no borders. One evening, as Kwame prepared to leave for the day, Mr. Calloway stopped by his office. The CEO told him that he wanted to thank him again, not just for saving the company, but for teaching him a lesson he would never forget. Kwame shook his hand and replied that everyone deserved to be seen. to be heard, to be valued. He emphasized that it didn't matter where someone came from or what job they currently held. What mattered was recognizing their potential and giving them a chance to show it. Mr. Calloway nodded, his expression thoughtful. He admitted that he had learned more from Kwame in one night than he had in years of running the company. As Kwame walked out of the building that evening, he looked back at the towering glass structure, the same building where he had once pushed a cleaning cart, invisible to those around him. But he wasn't invisible anymore. And his story had only just begun. Kwame's journey from janitor to senior engineer became a symbol of resilience, dignity, and the power of recognizing hidden talent. His story spread beyond TechVision, inspiring other companies to rethink how they viewed immigrant workers and the skills they brought with them. For Kwame, the victory wasn't just personal. It was for every immigrant who had been told they weren't good enough, every professional who had been forced to start over, every person who had been judged by their job title rather than their abilities. He had proven that respect wasn't something you earned through titles or wealth. It was something everyone deserved, simply by being human. And in the end, that was the most important lesson of all. Moral of the story: never judge someone by their current circumstances. The janitor cleaning your office might be a skilled engineer. The waitress serving your food might be a trained doctor. The Uber driver taking you home might be an entrepreneur, building an empire. Respect isn't about what someone does. It's about recognizing their humanity, their dignity, and the potential they carry within them. Because everyone has a story, and sometimes those stories are more powerful than you could ever imagine.